Welcome to LeetCode. In this video, we're going to solve contains duplicate. Let's get started. So we're given an array of numbers and we're asked to find if there's a duplicate in the array. If there's a duplicate in the array, then we're going to return true, and if there's no duplicates in the array, we'll just return false. So in our example array right here, you're given 1, 2, 3, 1, and obviously we know that this contains a duplicate of 1, so we just return true. And approach for this, let's go over the brute force first. So we have our array, and one possible way is just to do a brute force check of every pair or every possible pair in the array. So we're going to start at the first index and we'll check for every other number in the array. 1, 2. So at the end we find another number and we'll return true. But say we don't find this number, just say that it's like a different number, say it's like 4. So there's nothing there. And we go to the second index, then we check again. We don't find anything, we go to the next one, check the next one, we don't find anything, and finally at the end, and then we can return false if there's nothing in the array. So the overall time complexity for this approach is O of n squared, because in the worst case scenario we're going to be checking the array n squared times, or we're checking every nth integer, we're going through the array, or we're iterating through n times, so it's going to be n squared. Space is constant because we're not constructing any variables, or we're not storing anything in memory. So yeah, that's the brute force solution. There's two ways that we can do it more optimized. I like one way more than the other, but both of them are basically the same, and both of them involve hash maps. So let's say we have our array again, and our hash map is going to store the numbers that we've seen before, and if we find the number inside the hash map again, then we return true. And if we go through the entire array without finding anything in the hash map again, then we'll just return false. So let's create constructor hash map of key and value. So we have 1, obviously it's our first index, so we don't, or there's nothing in the hash map yet, so we can't find anything. So we'll just store this in the hash map as a key. And the value, we can just make it anything. I'll just make it 0. And then our next number would be 2. And 2 is not in the hash map already, so we'll just add it to the hash map with a value of 0. Then we go into 3, it's not in the hash map, so we'll go over there, add it again. And now we get to the final number 1, and we find it in the hash map already, so then we just return true. And just say this number was something like 4, then there's obviously nothing in the hash map and the loop ends, so then we can just return false. And the other way that we can do this is we take advantage of how a hash map works. So a hash map, it doesn't store duplicate values for the same key. So we can't have a key like we can't do this because then there's duplicates in there. So what like Python does, or usually any programming language does, is they just replace this value. So if we find 1 again, then we'll store it in here. So let's overwrite that, we'll get 010. So at the end of our loop, if we have a duplicate, the size of the length of our hash map would be less than the length of our initial array of numbers. So then we can just check if the length of the hash map is less than, we return true because we know that it's a duplicate. And if it's equal, then we know that there's no duplicates, so we just return false that there's no duplicates. And both of these solutions, or the first solution that we had of checking each number, both of these solutions would be the same complexity actually. So we have the time of O of n, where n is the size of the input array, and space would be, in the worst case for both of them would be O to O of n, because in the worst case, we're constructing a hash map of the same size as the input array of numbers that we have. And yeah, those should be the solutions for contains duplicates. Let's get into coding them. Let me move to my LeetCode. So yeah, we have them in LeetCode. So let's do the first solution. The first solution was our brute force, where we checked every possible pair. So there's just going to be our standard 2 loops, and then we'll have our inner loop going from the next number. And now we can just check if a nums I is equal to the number in our second loop. And if we find one that's the same, then we'll just return true. And if it goes through the entire loop, all the possibilities, then we'll just return false. And let's run this. This should work. And let's just submit it just to make sure. It might be taking too long. Okay, so time limit exceeded. So this solution is not even working for LeetCode, obvious, because this one's not the most optimized. So let's make ours. Let's do the optimized solution. So our first approach for the hash map was checking if the value was inside the hash map again. So I'm just going to use default int so I don't have to write as much code. So let's go through the nums. And if we find that the number is inside the map already, then we're going to return true. Else, we will just put the number inside the hash map with value of 0, it doesn't matter. And if it goes through all the numbers without finding anything in the hash map, then we'll just return false. And let's see. And let's see if this one works. So yeah, this one passes the time limit because obviously it's more optimized. So let's move to the third solution. So the third solution is pretty close. We don't need any of this stuff right here. All we just do is we'll put every number inside the hash map. So now we have all the numbers inside the hash map. So the hash map by default will just take off any duplicates that we have. So now we just need to return true if the length of the map is less than the numbers. So if we just do the length of the map is less than the length of our input, then it'll return true, and otherwise it'll just return false. So if the length of the numbers is equal to the length of the map, then it'll return false. And let's submit this. So yeah, those are all 3 solutions to contains duplicate.